Hello and welcome back to another English podcast with Paul. I'm joined here today with my friend Ashley Bevan. Say hello, Ashley.
Hiya, nice to meet you.
So we got just a few questions to ask about your experience with learning languages, and tell the audience your language that we're going to talk about today.
So I am Welsh, and I've grown up in ever since I was could walk, basically, in a school that taught Welsh. So it was technically my first language, um, and then obviously I had English spread out in there when living at home because my parents were English of origin, like grandparents and stuff.
Don't give away too much. We've
Oh,
got a
right,
list of
okay.
questions. You're
Yeah, yeah.
getting a bit ahead of ourselves.
Sorry.
Bit excited. Okay, so that answers the first question. Then you were taught in school.
Yeah, in school, yeah.
All right. Okay. So the questions that I've got out in front of us. How much fun was involved with learning the language in school?
Um, from a really young age, it is quite fun because obviously most kids are growing up in English families, so they know the basics and stuff. And then when you're starting to learn Welsh, it's sort of the same sort of thing where it's like very simple, very uh, for babies basically. So
No pressure.
yeah, it's like picture books. Um, and colors, numbers. You start off as if you are starting a fresh language, but there is the added side of that red is red in English, and then you're seeing it in a different language, and you sort of, after time, the same with learning any language, you sort of get used to it, and you can correlate the words.
Okay. So were you learning both languages at the same time, or is if Welsh is your first language, you correlated red with red in Welsh first, and then had to learn it in English?
Um, it was almost simultaneous. It was because I started nursery, um, and they were speaking Welsh and trying to teach us at the same time. I was sort of learning it at home in English and learning it at school in Welsh. So it was sort of side by side. Um, but obviously, the Welsh version of teaching it, there was the English word next to it as well. So it was like I was learning both at the same time in school as well. So
I see. Okay. And were they sort of opposed to one another in regards to grammar and sentence structure, like a lot of other language, or did a lot of it flow easily in and out together?
a lot of it flows evenly, but it is Welsh is similar to like a French sort of way of speaking in the sense of if something is feminine or masculine,
Oh, okay.
whereas like English isn't. Obviously, English is just gender neutral, isn't it?
Yeah.
Most of the time. Um, but yeah, there are some, not all the time, but there are some things that you could say that are feminine or masculine.
Okay.
But very rare that those sentences ever come out. It's usually very neutral.
Right. Okay. I'm with you. So my next question then is, what about TV shows and radio and cartoons growing up for absorbing Welsh language?
Um, for growing up, it wasn't as big as it is now. So you had S4C, like you still do.
Sorry, you have what?
S4C.
What's that?
It's Channel 4 in Wales, basically.
Oh, okay.
So we still have normal Channel 4 as well, but it is, if you went to number 4 on your TV, it would be the S4C, and that's all Welsh TV shows and news and this, that, and the other. But growing up for me, there was only two programs on it. I think 2 or 3 programs on it, um, and there was a couple of cartoons sprinkled in there as well. One of the other ones was basically a Welsh EastEnders called Pobl Cwm. That's been going for years and years and years.
Brilliant.
Um, but compared to today, there's a lot more variety. There's a lot more choice. There's a lot more TV shows, and the same with radio now. You got BBC Radio Wales or Radio Cymru or whatever, which is completely in Welsh 24/7. Um, I think they do bring in a little bit of English if they're doing a sports thing where they're interviewing a player who doesn't speak
Okay.
Welsh. They have to speak English on there. So
All right.
with Welsh, you have to speak English as well, because even wherever you live, not everyone speaks the language. It's a very, very under the radar sort of
Okay.
language,
Well,
so
that
to
that
speak.
moves us on to the next sort of questions in regards to like what sort of stuff is there for language in regard to community outside of a school, and growth. I have seen it on some road signs, for example.
Yeah, so every road sign, and this was something they fought for as I was growing up, I think. I can't remember, it was a long time ago. But that was a thing that they fought for, is to make sure that every sign in Wales has Welsh and English on it, with Welsh being the primary label.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so because it was, I think it was backwards, and that's what they were working towards. So there's lots of that, but in terms of the language in general and just day to day use, there are some places, especially up north, where it's everyone's Welsh, everyone speaks Welsh. Um,
Wow. Wow, I didn't know that.
um, but obviously they speak English, but they'd rather not. Um, and they're very, very passionate about the Welsh language and to keep it going and stuff. And then the further south you come, it sort of dilutes a little bit. But there's a lot more people that are trying to connect with their Welsh heritage, and they're trying to pick it up, and apps like Duolingo and stuff have really helped people.
So you can get it on Duolingo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Well, that again feeds on to the next question nicely. It's almost like you've seen the questions and you're helping me out here. So going on like to government programs, is like the government paperwork in Wales written in Welsh first?
Um, I'm not sure about like all the way up to the top, possibly. But for us, with anything that comes through the post,
Yeah.
more often than not, especially if it's like an NHS letter or uh, Department of Work and Pensions or any of those sort of like council
Government
tax
agencies.
government agencies, that will always come either double-sided or two letters, one in Welsh, one in English.
Oh, okay.
So you can read whichever one you want. Personally, I think it's sort of a waste of paper, especially when there's a good chunk of forms.
Yeah.
Um, but then I guess that would mean they'd have to get people to say I'd rather this in Welsh or English, which is doable, but lots of people probably wouldn't bother taking it.
All right.
But
Okay. Okay.
but yeah, most of the stuff that comes to us in the post is Welsh and English, and it does trickle down to other things like I don't know. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head, like Specsavers, for example, when they send you that you need an eye test and stuff, that might have Welsh on it, and yeah, bits and
That's
pieces
good.
like that. Yeah.
That's good. I like that. Okay. What about the general use of being able to use the language? Like you said, you were in the south, so like friends and families. And then is there any other communities around the world that speak Welsh?
Yeah. So, um, lots of my friends speak Welsh because we went to the Welsh school together. We grew up with it.
Of course. Yeah.
My mum has always tried to pick it up, and she knows more than normal everyday people would, um, but not fluently, not as much as me and my brother could speak. Um, but we don't really use it too much, um, and I don't know why. I think it's just, especially down where we are, no one really speaks it out loud anyway, so there's not really much use for it. I think the only time people ever use it is in a social situation if you wanted an English person not to know what you were saying about them.
Yeah. Of course.
Um, but yeah, other than that, it's not really used too much. And then obviously, yeah, like I said, it's up north where it gets a bit more used. And um, but around the world, there's a place down in Patagonia, in Argentina, where there is a big community of Welsh speakers in
Brilliant.
Argentina. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
I never knew that. I never knew. I wouldn't have even guessed that. I wouldn't have guessed it.
I didn't know it until someone told me, and I was like, "No way!" But there's Welsh down
Does
in
that make you want
Argentina.
to go there?
It does a little bit, and apparently Patagonia is quite nice anyway. So
Yeah, of course, of
so.
course. Good reason. All right then. So what about your personal opinion about the language itself, and maybe the thoughts of the heritage of the language, and where you might think it's going to be in 5 years, 10 years, because it's been like a phoenix, been brought back to life.
Um, it has, and it's built since being a kid. I've noticed an increase in the amount of people using it, speaking it, and seeing it everywhere. I don't know where the peak of that is. It, I personally think it's sort of flattening out a little bit, um, and I think that could be mainly to everything is becoming more online and more online, whereas everything is in English. Um,
Yeah.
so I think we're going to hit a peak and it'll start just dropping off again. Um, but there's always campaigns for keeping the Welsh language alive, and there's always lessons and obviously the apps and stuff, and because everything is so social media based and stuff, there's not really much incentive to do things in Welsh because
That makes sense.
there's
Yeah,
not much
yeah.
of an audience for it.
I understand that.
Um,
It reminds me of the French speaking people in Canada, and how much they have to fight for theirs. But they've I think got quite a lot of heritage and connection,
yeah,
much like the Welsh.
yeah.
So for the future, how important is Welsh language to their heritage and keeping it
Oh,
alive?
it's massively important, and we do have to keep it alive. I think it's just I I believe that every school should sort of be like what I experienced in growing up. That I went to Welsh schools. Um, for me personally, using it though, they need to be not as strict as they were. So for me, growing up in the schools, is we would get a telling off if we were caught speaking English, which to me is kind of mad because you're not doing anything wrong. I understand that the whole point is to go and learn Welsh and speak Welsh all the time and blah blah blah, but to be sort of told off in a sense that you're doing something really wrong, because they were very strict on it.
Wow.
Um, it sort of put people off and wanted to rebel against it because it didn't
Yeah.
seem like a privilege then. It felt like a chore.
Okay.
So since then, I've sort of that's been ingrained in me now, where I'm like, well, no, I don't want to. I don't want to speak Welsh because it's just a chore to me. I feel like I've been forced into doing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, which is a shame because if it was more open and people are gonna speak English, that's their first language. You can be like, oh, do you want to work on your Welsh rather than start screaming at kids about it because then that sticks with them then.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
They could approach it a different way, make it more fun and secretive and or interesting, maybe.
yeah, yeah. Instead of feeling like you're a criminal, basically, because
Wow.
that's how it was feeling. You'd be in detention and this, that, and the other.
Wow. Yeah,
It was very extreme.
that's very sad. That's very sad. Okay. Not to harp on about that. Let's change the subject a little bit. What other languages would you ever consider learning, especially if it helped you for travel or for work?
So I did French in school, and I was getting pretty good at it. And even if I go over to France now, I can understand. I can't speak as much because I haven't practiced it in a while, but I can understand what's being said basically. As long as they're slow and clear about what they're saying, I can sort of make out words and put sentences together and stuff. Um, whereas I even did a tiny bit of German, a tiny bit of Spanish, but not to the extent of French. So when I went and ended up in Germany, I had no idea what anyone was saying, which was obviously difficult. Um, and I went to Japan last year and I did a couple of months on Duolingo trying to learn that, but that was difficult, especially because there's two or three different variations of the symbols and different ways of saying things. That was a lot to take in.
Goodness.
But
If you had to choose one language then, other than Welsh.
French probably or Spanish.
Okay.
French because I've got that little bit of level already,
Yeah, yeah.
but Spanish just because it's a very broad, like you can use it a
Can
lot of
be useful, yeah.
different places. So
Yeah. Okay.
same with French.
Fair enough. Okay. What would you have done different if you were to relearn Welsh again? How would you like to have learned it or absorbed it?
Um, do.
Because if you want to speak to your grandparents in it, and it's quite a chore, maybe if it was, I don't know, a happier experience, you would
Hmm.
have embraced it more. So, like if you want to teach your children in the future to speak Welsh, how would you approach it?
I would approach it like a game. So make it fun, you know.
Mm.
I'm someone who I like doing things if there's, you know, I feel like I can see the progression and I can feel like I'm being rewarded, you know. Um, so with kids, that's relatively easy, you know. Give them a gold sticker in a book or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Um, as you're older, that's a bit different. I'm someone I've always grown up and I like accumulating points for things, so I can have like a high score on something or other. Like
Okay. So
yeah,
your
that
competitiveness kicks in.
sort of yeah. So like even with playing games and stuff, you could get achievements for things, and that would boost your number up. And
Yeah.
I would be one of those people who was like, right, I got to get this and that. So for me, learning the language, if I was to do it now, I would have to have that points thing, and you know, something that you can keep a streak going, so you're sort of proud of that streak. Whereas, because you need to be not upset, but you need to be like, oh damn it, I missed today. I didn't do that today, and you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've lost my my streak of doing it.
Okay. Okay. I understand. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Right then. So we're wrapping it up now. I'm using your phrase, wrapping it up. Um, what's your socials then that you would like to put out, and I'll put a link in the description below.
So the socials would be Van Life Welsh Wanderers on, I think that's Instagram, and I think that's what the podcast is called as well. And that's on Spotify and Amazon Music, Apple Music, and this, that, and the other. And that's just all about van life and the community and travel, basically.
Excellent. Can I ask you to say it one more time, a little bit slower?
Van Life Welsh Wanderers.
Welsh Wanderers. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming on. See you guys in the next one. Bye
Thank you.
bye for now.